everybody. It's Mark Blumhardt here, founder and CEO of Bootstrap. And today we've got a really interesting topic, something that I've been thinking about quite a bit recently. I read this very interesting statistic about LeBron James. And LeBron James supposedly spends about $1 million a year on his body. If you think about it, you're like, what? How do you spend $1 million? That was my first initial reaction. But as you unpack it, it's really kind of interesting, actually. LeBron James realizes that his entire life, his career, and actually his legacy's built on one thing. It's his body. And he needs to take care of his body. That's the machine, if you will. And when he has that crystal clear focus, that means he pours all his resources into that just in the hopes that he can realize his full potential. And Dwayne Johnson, I guess, is the same way. He works out 3.5 hours a day. He has this trailer. It's called the Iron Pony, and he takes it with him on all his video shoots. And he works out first thing in the morning, 3.5 hours a day. Now, the reason I'm thinking about all this is because I think I need to have a workout regimen in my own life. Okay, there you go. But the biggest question is, actually another question would be, what's the most important thing to you and what's the most important thing to me? Not necessarily in the creative space, it not necessarily means that I have to have a 6% body fat and, completely sit here completely ripped out. That'd be kind of nice, don't get me wrong. But what is your machine? And how are you developing your machine? And I would say there's a couple different things about your machine. Of course, it's your body, because if you don't have a body, how are you going to do pretty much anything? But I would say really and largely, it's your creativity and your personality. That which makes you good at what you do and easy to work with. So another statistic, so my PhD's in psychology. But unfortunately, your personality's pretty much baked at the age of 35. So whether you're 35 or over 35 or, 35 seems so far in the future, I'm not really sure, but it's kind of an interesting thought that at some point in your life, the psychologists say, okay, your personality is kind of baked at this point. And so I want to talk about that. I want to talk about it in light of that being the machine. So we're not out there working out, but we've got something else that's making us money. And to be the greatest that we can be, we got to take care of that. So if you think about your personality, the biggest contributor to your personality is your memories. And your memories, it's this cognitive foundation that's get built over time. And the fuel that creates this cognitive foundation for your mind is your emotions. And your emotions help your body and all the cells in your body and your brain remember these events. So if you have something happen to you and you don't have a strong emotion attached to it, hence branding, you're going to struggle a little bit to remember that. And that's why we're trying to make emotional connections and meaningful connections and, create that spark in branding. But what about you and your life? And so a lot of times it starts getting kind of interesting where you've got these negative experiences, and these negative experiences are building up, and these synapses keep firing and firing and firing until they become hardwired and they become hard like highways in your mind. And that creates your personality, because your personality is a reaction to these events that's basically formed from previous experiences. So let me break that down for you. Let's say you're driving down the road. Somebody cuts you off, right? You can look at that person and you can be, oh my goodness, that person just cut me off. I almost hit that person. So what's happening at that point is you start getting pissed off, let's say, right? Maybe you don't do anything. Maybe you don't flip the person off. Maybe you don't chase the person down. Maybe you don't even shake a fist or anything. Maybe you don't even mutter under your breath. But what happens is because of that near accident, everything just becomes alive, right? Your adrenaline pump starts cranking up. Your heart starts racing, and you're like, So what happened there is just a moment of being alive, this kind of, this exaggerated being, if you will. And you might go back to work and, or back home or something, and you might tell somebody about it or something like that, maybe write some post on Facebook or something, I'm not really sure. But that's the extent of it. But what happened inside is so significant. What happened inside was there was something that fired. And for many people, that kind of firing becomes, over time, addictive. It's just like anything else. It's just like a drug. So if you take a drug, you're firing something. You're entering something, and then something happens. You're like, okay, that felt good. Whether it was a positive or negative, it was up or a downer, it doesn't really matter. It was a firing. And so what happens in these situations that kind of happen again and again and again is that you're firing and you're firing and you're firing and you're firing and you're firing. And what happens is these synapses, these thoughts that are happening, they start creating these highways. And they create these highways that are kind of completely concrete in your mind, right? And that becomes your personality. And so if you think about it, it becomes pretty dangerous. So let's say something happened to me that was painful 15 years ago, 20 years ago. And because it happened to me, I think about it a lot. And I think about it and think about it. And the way I deal with that is every time I think about it, I kind of get a little charge. Like, that was wrong. Like, I think about it, that was messed up. Think about it some more, I'm like, man, I can't believe that happened to me. It's completely understandable. But what you're doing is you're building up an addiction to that emotion. You're not even building up an addiction to that memory. And that's what's so scary about that. So if something happened, let's say 10, 15, 20 years ago, and I think about it and think about it and think about it, I'm feeding that addiction. But I'm not feeding that addiction with a thought. Be careful with that. I'm feeding it with emotion. So what happens is, unbeknownst to me, little by little, I got to feed that emotion, because if I thought about that situation exactly the same way, I'm not going to get that charge, just like any other drug. I got to add to it. So I add a little bit to it to give myself this charge I'm looking for, unbeknownst to myself, and add and add and add and add and add. And these thoughts keep coming and coming and coming and coming. And I think about it and I think about it. They say you have about 80,000 thoughts a day, and about 90% of them are the same thoughts. So over 70,000 thoughts are coming to you every day that are exactly the same. And you're building these highways in your mind. So if you think about this negatively and you're not thinking actually about the events, you think you're thinking about the events, but you're actually thinking about the emotion, you're feeding that emotion. What happens then is that this story starts getting a life of its own. And that's what's so scary about everything. So I can think with crystal clarity on something that has happened in the past. And now research shows that we don't remember it the same way that it actually happened. Because we've built and built and built upon this, because we've built upon the emotion. And so that's why so many times you read through like Insta and everything, people are like, think positive thoughts, think positive thoughts, think positive thoughts. You know, without them telling you why you got to think positive thoughts, you're like, how's this going to help? I mean, I got wrong 20 years ago. But, you know, it might not even, your memory might not even be accurate of what happened. And so that's why you really have to think forward, and you have to think positively about things. So especially even if you have a negative reaction with a negative experience with a client, or, you know, another employee or an associate or something like that, then you know what? The thing is, you're baking your personality. And if, let's say you're 35 years old, I'm way over 35 years old, I got to think about it, and I got to be like, okay, am I happy the way I am? Or there's some change that needs to happen? And these need to almost be radical changes, and about the only vehicle you can make these changes is positivity. So when you think about these things, I'm not sitting here like flipping up these Instagram quotes going like, think positive, think positive, think positive, think positive, think positive. Oh my goodness, they're so annoying. Well, I'm telling you why. It's because, first of all, it's like you're feeding a negative emotion. That, second of all, might be giving you the wrong memory in the first place. So why do you hold on to it? So as you're moving forward in life, what is your legacy? Yeah, you could create great designs, great logos, but isn't our legacy just the meaningful connections that we make, the people around us, the people like being with us? Like, isn't that more? Like, if you're gone, who would you matter to? If you were gone, it has to do with the everyday, the day-to-day interactions of people. In many ways, that's art. That's all it is. That's art. You know, like you can go through a whole career, and maybe come up with 5 or 6 logos that are just amazing. You spend your whole entire life looking for 5 or 6 logos that, kind of stand the test of time, if you're lucky. But then you just forget about the people around you, building those meaningful connections. So just to recap, In my mind, I see very, very closely, very clearly that I have a machine. It's my body, it's my personality. Very, very aware of it. I need to protect it. I need to build it. And I need to stop and sit there and just look at it like a subject, right? What's good about it? What's bad about it? And if there's things that are bad about it, I need to change. I need to change it, and you need to be radical to change it. You need to make, there's a reason we had a Revolutionary War. We can't look for an evolution. We need a revolution. That Revolutionary War, you start all over again. So protect that body, protect that machine, protect that personality. And if you don't like what you see, make some changes. So good luck. All right, and so the book of the week is a book called A Whole New Mind, How Right-Brainers Will Rule the Future. And it's by Daniel H. Pink. And I believe Daniel Pink came from Columbus, Ohio. So, and in this book, it's an extension of basically The World is Flat by, what's his name? Thomas Friedman, which is an incredible read. I recommend that as well. But what it does is goes through and says that we're in a whole new time of life right now, right? Let's say when I was growing up, I was a kid. My parents and all my friends' parents told my friends to become doctors and lawyers and, engineers. My dad was an engineer. And the reason being was that was a knowledge mindset. So, we needed, let's say in the 50s and 60s, 70s, 80s, and maybe all the way into maybe the 90s or so, what we needed is people that had knowledge. We needed doctors. We needed people with knowledge, like attorneys and, engineers and stuff. So we've got that. And now, now with the internet, we've kind of hit a whole new dawn of awareness. And information is readily available at your fingertips, So I don't necessarily call my attorney with every question I have. Many times I'll just get on the internet and kind of see what 5 or 6 people are thinking, try to make a decision between that and move on. And so that's happening in so many different sectors. You can get onto websites and self-diagnose yourself, for example. Hey, do you have a cough? Yeah. Is it bringing something up? Yes. Is it yellow or is it green? It's green. Okay. Do you have a headache? Do you have a fever? Yes or no? And they'll give you penicillin or whatever it is. So a lot of stuff is being, just automated, and this knowledge is actually turning into commodity. And what this Daniel Pink postulates is that we got to know what to do with that information. And instead of just being able to rote memorize this information, just spit it out, he said these people, the whole new mind, the people that have the creativity to kind of understand all these bits and pieces and put them together, those are the ones, because it's all commodity, those are the ones that are actually going to have a very interesting future. So I highly recommend this book to anybody, especially in the beginning of their career. And I would recommend it to any parent that has creative children, because it's so easy. And one of the reasons we're doing all this is because there's so many parents out there say, don't become an artist. Don't go into the arts. Don't do this, because it's the whole starving artist thing, right? So trust me, you can be in this environment. You can have fun doing it. You can realize your full self, and you can get paid to do it, and you can get paid fairly well to do it as well. So again, the book of the week is A Whole New Mind by Daniel Pink, Why Right-Brainers Will Rule the Future. An incredible read. So good luck.